Hello aviation enthusiasts, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're peeling back the layers of history to uncover the stories you've never heard. About the planes that were too wild, too advanced, or just too strange for their time. These are the forgotten pioneers of the sky. The experimental aircraft whose blueprints and test flights secretly shaped the future of aviation. Let's start with a design that looks like it flew straight out of a science fiction movie. The Northrop XB-35. Imagine a giant boomerang soaring through the clouds. This was a flying wing bomber developed in the 1940s. The idea was brilliant. Get rid of the traditional fuselage and tail to reduce drag and increase range and payload. It was a radical concept, powered by 4 massive propeller engines. Test pilots said flying it felt like surfing on air, incredibly smooth and stable. However, the complex propeller system was its Achilles heel, constantly causing vibrations and mechanical nightmares. The project was eventually cancelled. But was it a failure? Absolutely not. Decades later, Northrop Grumman revived the flying wing concept, armed it with advanced fly-by-wire technology, and gave us the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. The ghost of the XB-35 lives on in one of the most advanced aircraft ever built. Next, let's talk about speed, and I mean serious speed. Before the legendary SR-71 Blackbird, there was another contender for the king of speed, the Republic XF-103 Thunder Warrior. This interceptor, designed in the 1950s, was a rocket with wings. Its goal was to fly at Mach 3, intercepting Soviet bombers before they could even get close. The design was insane. To handle the extreme heat of high-speed flight, it was to be built almost entirely of titanium. The pilot wouldn't even have a traditional canopy. Instead, a periscope system would let him see outside. The engine was a turbo ramjet, a hybrid that would function as a turbojet at low speeds and a ramjet at high speeds. It was pushing the absolute limits of 1950s technology. The costs spiraled, and the engine development hit a wall. A full-scale mock-up was built, but the XF-103 never actually flew. The lessons learned in titanium construction and high-speed aerodynamics were invaluable. They directly fed into later projects, including the SR-71. The Thunder Warrior was a silent teacher, proving what was possible and what was still just out of reach. Now for something completely different. How about an aircraft that could take off and land like a helicopter but fly like a plane? We're talking about the Ryan X-13 Vertijet. This was a tail-sitter jet from the 1950s. It would take off vertically, balanced on its own jet thrust, then pivot to horizontal flight and reverse the process to land. Think about the skill required to pilot this thing. The pilot had to look straight up at the sky during takeoff and landing. The cockpit seat would even pivot to help the pilot stay oriented. Test pilot Peter Girard successfully completed the full flight cycle, launching vertically, transitioning to horizontal flight, and then landing vertically on its mobile platform. It was a spectacular achievement, proving the concept worked. But the system was complex, had a limited payload, and was just too impractical for widespread military use. The dream of a jet that could operate anywhere faded, but the quest for vertical takeoff and landing aircraft didn't. The Vertijet was a crucial step onto the path that eventually led to the Harrier jump jet and today's F-35B. Let's shift from vertical to nuclear. Yes, you heard that right. The idea of a nuclear-powered bomber was seriously considered during the Cold War. Enter the Convair NB-36H, nicknamed the Crusader. This wasn't a fully nuclear-powered plane, but a flying testbed. They took a massive B-36 bomber and installed a functioning, air-cooled nuclear reactor in its bomb bay. The reactor didn't power the plane, but it was there to study the effects of radiation on the crew and systems. The cockpit was encased in a 12-ton capsule of lead and rubber to protect the pilots. It made 47 test flights between 1955 and 1957. The project proved that flying a nuclear reactor was technically feasible, but the immense weight of the shielding and the obvious safety concerns were overwhelming. If it crashed, you'd have a radiological disaster. The program was eventually scrapped in favor of more practical solutions like aerial refueling, which gave bombers the global range they needed without the nuclear risk. The NB-36H remains one of the most audacious and frightening experiments in aviation history. Now, from nuclear power, let's go to something that looks like it was designed by a comic book artist. The Voight V-173, the Flying Pancake. This aircraft had a unique semicircular body that acted as one giant low-aspect ratio wing. The goal was to create a carrier-based fighter that could take off and land at incredibly low speeds, minimizing the need for a long runway. With its two large propellers at the wingtips, it could almost hover. Test pilots reported that it was surprisingly easy to fly and incredibly robust. It was so stable that it was nearly impossible to stall. During one emergency landing on a beach, the aircraft flipped over, but the pilot walked away with minor injuries, and the plane was so tough it was repaired and flown again. The Navy was impressed and ordered a more powerful prototype, the XF-5U Flying Flapjack. However, by the time the Flapjack was ready for testing, the jet age had arrived. Propeller-driven fighters were becoming obsolete, and the program was cancelled. The Flying Pancake, despite its promising performance, was a casualty of technological progress. But its lessons in low-speed aerodynamics and lift generation weren't forgotten, and you can see echoes of its principles in modern drone designs that require stable, low-speed flight. Finally, we can't talk about experimental aircraft without mentioning the forward-swept wing. The Grumman X-29 was a stunning aircraft that flew in the 1980s. Its wings were swept forward, the opposite of almost every high-speed jet you've ever seen. This design offers incredible agility and control, especially at high angles of attack. The problem is that it's also inherently unstable. The aerodynamic forces on a forward-swept wing want to rip it right off the plane. The X-29 could only fly because it was made of advanced carbon fiber composites to handle the stress, and it was controlled by a sophisticated triple-redundant computerized flight control system that made thousands of corrections per second. A human pilot alone could not fly it. The X-29 proved the viability of forward-swept wings and the power of computerized fly-by-wire systems, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible in aircraft maneuverability. These are just a few of the ghosts in the machine of aviation history. The XB-35, the XF-103, the X-13 Vertijet, the NB-36H, the Flying Pancake, and the X-29. They may not have entered mass production, but their stories are not tales of failure. They are a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and the relentless pursuit of progress. Each one was a stepping stone, a lesson learned, a piece of the puzzle that created the safe and advanced air travel we enjoy today. Their legacy flies on in the DNA of every modern aircraft. What do you think is the most fascinating experimental aircraft? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from the history of flight. We'll see you in the next one.